Welcome, everybody, to the Kinesio Outdoors podcast, where my goal is to educate you on how to safely enjoy exercise indoors and outdoors, inspire you to experience life outside, and encourage you to live a more active life closer to nature. Today on the podcast, I have Cory, of just my friend Cory. Thanks, Cory, for taking time out of your day to join me here. And how are you?
Oh, not bad, dude. Happy to be here. Happy to help out any way I can.
Well, sweet. So the reason I wanted to have you on here is we actually met through our mutual friend Gunner, and Gunner told me you're a blue collar guy that's a hard hunter, and those are the kind of people I like. So I want to hear about your season. I know we've spoken a little bit in the past, off recording, and it sounds like you had a pretty cool season lined up. So I'm excited to hear how it went. Go ahead and before we dive into your season, let everybody know kind of who you are and what makes you tick.
Well, yeah, Cory Maxwell, born and raised on the Washington coast. Um, been hunting since I was little. As soon as the old man could throw me in the pickup, I'd go. Um, been doing a lot of out of state stuff since I was little. My grandfather was also a huge hunter. He was a guide, um, running out of Prince William Sound in the Brook Range in the 60s. He's a commercial fisherman. And so I got exposed to a lot of big game, trophy big game hunting young. And he retired in Idaho. And so after going to Alaska and Washington, we'd spend a lot of the falls visiting him. And so been doing a lot of that since I was little, man, and just it just transitioned to now I got kids and now I'm trying to show them the ropes. And I think the hardest thing for me is actually doing the small stuff, the day trips.
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at the logistics of a week, 2 week, even a 3 week trip, but it's trying to find the way to integrate my boy and my daughter into just those, not trying to go for the moon, just getting them outside and getting them exposed. So that's actually kind of what I'm trying to learn to do now.
I'm gonna touch on that real quick and I'll let you keep going. I think it's so funny that you said that the logistics of a 2, 3 week trip is easier than a 1 day, making sure your kid has a really positive experience. It's so much more stressful to take somebody else out with you, right? Than to just go by yourself.
Oh yeah.
Way
Um,
worse.
I've I've really taken it upon myself on my own in the last 5 years since my old man passed to I hunted by myself or with him. That was it.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so I have my way of going about things. Not saying that what I do is better or worse than anybody else, but I know I've been successful the way I do things, and so is my old man. And family friends of that I know their background on. So I take a grain of salt with just about what everybody says, but if what I do and listening to someone else like agenda, it I'm kind of an asshole to hunt with, if I'm being honest. Like if it's a if and I've really tried to better myself that way because taking my kids, can't be an asshole and have a kid have a good experience. You really kind of soften those curves of and remember what it was like to kids get cold toes. They want a million crumply little snacks out there. And but I've tried really hard to take new hunters out. The last couple years, I've taken a few elk hunting, bear hunting, blacktails, and then did a couple mule deer trips. I try and do at least one longer trip with a new hunter uh, every year.
So, what's a longer trip to a new hunter versus to you?
I would say most new hunters, a longer trip is probably in the 2 to 3 day range.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
reasonably, just because of the packing your fears part, which
Hmm.
all of us do. I don't care if you've been doing it 1 year or 30. You pack something because it creates comfort for you and it
Yeah.
makes you stay longer. And until you've done a multitude of two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, however many days, you're going to be able to dwindle that down to like, okay, what actually creates that comfort that um, makes me stay longer?
Hmm.
And everybody's got their own. Maybe someone's going to pack a light titanium stove because they're like, I do not do good in the cold. Um, Maybe someone's going to pack that extra power bank because they're like, got to be in contact with the old lady or the kids more. whatever your comfort is, and especially new hunters, they're gonna, dude, I took a guy out 2 years ago. I didn't check his pack, but I do now every time I
Yeah.
go. He had a fully sheathed hatchet. He had a full Costco pack of baby wipes, not just the single ones, but I finally looked
The
at the bag because
80.
he was, yeah, dude, one of
Oh,
the full
yeah.
baby size ones.
Yeah, that's what
And
we get. That's like
yeah, and
3 pounds.
if you're a wet wipe guy, cool. But he was dying coming up this ridge, and I'm like, wait a minute. And I watched him pull something out of his pack, and I was like, dump that. What do you have in there? And he was probably packing 25 pounds of shit. I was like, wait a minute, man. Are you Bear Grylls? What are we doing here? And so the last couple years now, I've like, hey, let's let's take a look at your gear list. Let's see what's in your bag before we even step away from camp or the truck or what have you.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. My dad taught me how to hunt. So he tells everybody, Stefan knows how to hunt. Well, no. I know how to do what my dad taught me very well.
Yeah.
I'm very good at following his directions. So he goes, yeah, I only like to hunt with him because I know he knows what to do. And if we see different things, we can coordinate pretty well and figure out what's going on. Well, I've been taking some newer friends out hunting and I just made a gear list. I'll have to send it to you. It might be easy to just send it to people. After my one season of guiding, I just made a gear list for my buddy. I was like, here's this gear list. I carry all this stuff. Some of these things you don't need to carry. Like if we have two elk tags, we're probably not going to get two elk in archery elk season. So I'll just take the game bags. You just save the 2 pounds or whatever.
Mhm.
And um, I don't go as far as checking their bag, but sending out that little gear list I think is pretty helpful. I'll have to get that over to you.
Yeah, man.
So, what is it that you do for work? Because I know you did a lot of hunting this year, so I'd be curious to see how you were able to pull that off.
Yeah. So right now I'm a captain for the Washington State Ferries. I'm one of the younger guys, but I started doing this commercially straight out of high school.
Mhm.
I'm a fifth generation mariner, so this industry is kind of difficult. The bars of entry, the paperwork you got to file just to get in is can be very confusing for the layperson. Um, I started out commercial fishing. Like I said, I grew up on the coast, so most of us kids that grew up out there, dad, cousin, family friend, was running a charter boat or a small seiner or commercial dungy fishing in the winter, and so my whole family on my dad's side commercially fishes up north, up out of Prince William Sound. A couple cousins run seiners, and they all gill net for silvers, which I've gone and participated in every couple of years, but. I did that growing up, and then um, I tried to get away from it. Me and my old man kind of got into it and wanted to kind of make my own path, and then realized like this sucks, man. And I was like, okay, what do I got to do? Because I pretty much gauged my life on hunting season since I was like really 16, 17. What do I got to do to do this? And I started sailing, got on tugboats as a cook at first, which was uh, probably one of the hardest things in life I've ever done.
Yeah, I bet.
Uh, Rocking and rolling for 30 to 60 to 90 days, feeding 8 to 9 grown men. I'm 18. Most of these guys are 2 to 3 times my age, And so the first trip was pretty damn bad. I could barely boil water. Um, but started there, ended up moving up through the ranks, taking courses when I needed to, and got my first uh, officer's endorsement license when I was 24, I want to say. And I've been sailing as officer for the last 12 years until I got here. Had to take a step back because I had to raise and grade my license. So going from, building routes, navigating back to scrubbing shitters, which I hadn't done in 12 years. So it was a humbling experience there, but it was one of the best decisions. I get to be home every day now. I get to raise my kids, and I still get to hunt. And so if anybody's looking for a way to get September to November off, and you're not really don't really do a lot in the summers, there's money to be made and there's ways to do it.
Yeah, it's cool that you say that because so I guided for free. I called up a local guide. I said, "Hey, can I come help out for free?" So of course he said yes, right?
Oh yeah.
Um, and that's kind of how you have to get your foot into the outdoor industry if you're like, "Oh, I'm gonna do this." But really, if you work in the outdoor industry, you don't do much hunting.
No.
The people that do the hunting are the people that have the
Are
jobs
the
that
people that
afford
are
them
paying the
three
other
weeks
guy.
off a year. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So like my dad works for California DOT. He gets 3 weeks off every year. So whenever he draws his Montana tag, he takes 3 weeks off and goes
Yeah.
hunting. He gets almost the entire rifle season, and people don't understand. They're like, "Oh, I need to work in the hunting industry so I can hunt more." Like you'll be out there, but you're not going to be hunting. You'll be guiding,
Yeah. You're gonna
recording
pick one season.
somebody. Yeah, and then you might get an elk hunt in every 2, 3 years. So
Yeah. And it I do a lot of hunting now, but it was, my with my career path, it's evolved. Like, I didn't start really taking my archery hunting seriously because I predominantly work summers, spring and summers. And so the summer season generally for Alaska, where I spent most of my career, runs into September.
mhm.
So that was just my old man picked up a bow and threw down the rifle, I want to say in '03, and I made fun of him. I was like, you little stick flicker. And yeah, dude, but once he started having more success, like I mean, he was successful with a bow. I want to say 16 of 18 years from the time he picked it up till the time he finally passed. And I don't think I took my archery hunting seriously until 2012.
Mhm.
Um, because he was trying to get me to do it, and I finally got a part of September off, and I traded him a 357 686 snub nose for an old Bowtech he had.
Mhm.
Uh, oh, he swindled the shit out of me, but
Oh yeah.
I got the bow, and man, I look at pictures of like my anchor. Like I had my
Yeah.
string buried up in here. Like, oh, dude, I remember I was at a flat course, um, in King County, and I'm anchored up. I'm doing this, and all of a sudden my sight falls off, completely falls off my bow, and I drop, and one of the guys was shooting a trad bow next to me, and ended up being an editor for I want to say Outdoor Life or Outdoor,
Mhm.
one of the outdoor magazines. Helped me, had all these tools. I had no idea what I was doing, and helped me out there. And ended up getting a bull with my dad that season, and I was like, "Oh, this is easy." Oh, dude, I just happened to be with a phenomenal hunter in that unit, but
That's fun.
yeah,
Well, that's super cool. It sounds like you kind of live and breathe hunting, which is as much as my wife wants to think that I really care about my family and my career more. I love hunting the most out of everything. I
yeah,
feel bad for her. I like her more than hunting just a touch, but when it's hunting season, I like hunting more. It's kind of the way it goes. I'm not saying
oh
you're
yeah.
that way, but it sounds like you love hunting just as much as I do, which is pretty cool to hear. So let's dive into your 2024 fall hunting season. I know you had quite a few hunts lined up, so if you want to just go through each hunt, I think you had 4 hunts lined up, you said?
Uh, I Wolf, yeah, I can't remember, but yeah, so
Like
it's either
that,
four
yeah.
or five. So um, I did a pretty big spring hunt this year. Um, I had a group of buddies that were wanting to go, and it all kind of fell through, and I ended up going by myself. Um, Cousin ended up taking a job in Texas. Brother-in-law took over a company, and then one of my hunting buddies, who I'm hunting with this year, he just about died. He
Wow.
had some things go on with his health, and can't fault the dude. But yeah, but he survived. He's back better, and we got tags. We were lucky enough. I went over to Idaho and stood in line and got a couple tags for all of us this year. But
Nice.
I ended up going to Idaho this last year. Um, did 8 days. Um, Backpacked in. that one was a big training trip for what I was doing later in the fall, and we'll get into that one. Because this one was gonna my fall trip in Idaho was gonna be my longest trip backpacking to date. Um, but I didn't end up killing a bear. Ended up hiking in. I did 8, 9, I did about 8.5 miles day one. It was funny. Ended up meeting a guy at the trailhead, new family friends that I elk hunted with.
That's
So we
cool.
exchanged numbers until he parted ways on the trail and I kept going. Um, Set up camp, ended up going up this ridge that I'd found on the map. I was like, okay, this looks like where the snow line ended up being way higher than previous years, and most of my research had anticipated at least the snow line was at least 13, 1,400 feet higher than the previous 3, 4 years. So ended up getting up there and got on a really respectable bear day one. Got up, climbed about 1,800 feet up, and found was glassing over this other ridge, and a nice black down in the bottom of the canyon was right in there. Um, and I got down about eye level, and I really didn't want to kill a jet black because I'd killed two the year before, and was really looking for a color phase, and it was day one, so I was like, I didn't want to blow my load day one. I just hiked all the way in here, and so got down and just got some footage of it and was like, okay, we'll be all right. Like I'm in them, and man, I hunted my nuts off for about 7 days and never saw another one. I even hiked back up to that spot and
Hmm.
sat because it started snowing day 7, day 8 in the high country, and I sat and glassed that whole canyon and up above for 2 solid days. You know, you start that old saying, don't pass on the first day what you kill on the
Yeah.
last day. And oh, it bit me, dude. It was fun though. But never saw another one. Had my first not encounter, but hearing wolves at night. That was a
Hmm.
trip. Um, I ended up packing up the ridge and going around the basin and stayed up there day 4 and 5. And yeah, dude, out of nowhere, I wake up probably dark 1:30, 2:30 to just rip it. And it sounded like there's probably 6 or 7 different ones. Like I said, my first time, I'm not going to say I know how many were up there, but it definitely won't coyotes. Those were,
Oh yeah.
I've heard coyotes, and that was not squealing. That was howling. It was cool, man. Um, cool in a sense that cool they're there, but we all know the impacts that those things have had in
Yeah, yeah.
state Idaho. But so there was that trip. Came away
So
empty.
let me interject real quick. Sorry, Corey.
Yeah, go ahead.
Um, so you said that was a spring bear hunt. When in
Yeah.
spring was it? Were you looking for bears that were coming out of hibernation? Was it later and they're trying to do some mating? What were you kind of
So
looking
the
at?
original plan, like I said, everybody kind of bailed because they had their
Yeah.
own things going on. The original plan was it was going to be a shorter backpacking trip, but we were still going to hunt a different area.
Hmm.
It was still going to be anywhere from 5 to 7 days. But end of March, when everybody kind of let me know what was going on with their schedule, that they were bailing, because I originally planned it for later May. Weather was due to be better, not as many possibilities of snow flurries, so less gear for everybody.
Yeah.
But once everybody bailed, I was like, "Oh no, I'm going early. I'm going to go battle the snow
Yeah.
line. Like I want to hunt early. I have what I need to pack in for snow or what have you.
Yeah.
Like I'm
Yeah.
pretty
So you're
well
hunting the
equipped."
green up.
Yeah, and so I was like, "Okay, well, I'm gonna go try and find me a solid boar." Um, I came in with two bear tags because it's a reduced bear unit, so I mean they're $50 a pop, and then a wolf tag. You can't not buy one. And to
Yeah.
any of your listeners, yeah, if you go to Idaho, just buy a tag. They're $40.
Yeah.
And especially if you're hunting deer in a reduced unit, buy a bear tag. They're $40. You can, so you're not the idea of wasting a deer tag on a bear when you can probably buy one for $40.
Yeah, exactly.
Do that. Do that. And Idaho Fish and Game does a lot of good things with their tags compared to some of the other Western states out
For
there
sure.
with their tag sale money. So I know it's expensive to get out there, but if you're sitting there and you see a 300-pound boar, 6 footer, and you're sitting there contemplating downgrading your deer tag to a bear, just spend $40.
So
You know,
I'm gonna have you
that's my
explain one
rant.
more thing and then I'll have you move on to your next hunt. So in Idaho, you can, like you said, downgrade your tag, right?
Yeah.
So why don't you explain that really quick? Because most people don't know that. So why don't you explain that and kind of explain, like you said, why you would want to do it. Like a 300-pound bear is going to have way more meat than a 180-pound deer, right? So why don't
Yeah,
you explain that for
and
everybody?
it's very, and you're doing a good service to the, the deer and elk population. However you need to validate it to yourself. But okay. So if you've got a deer tag and a deer tag that you want in Idaho, you probably had to either get lucky on the internet, or
Yeah.
you did what I do and you stand in line. You get somewhere at dark, 3:30 in the morning, try and be the first guy or girl in line. You get your deer tag. So hunting in Idaho, you can downgrade your deer tag and tag a bear,
Hmm.
but you can't upgrade a bear tag to a deer. So please remember that part of that. You end up meeting a fish and wildlife officer and you tried to upgrade you're gonna have a real sour
Yeah.
day in a couple years in court, and you're probably gonna lose your hunting rights. So just that's the easy part of it.
Yeah. Well, sweet. Yeah, thanks for explaining that. A lot of people don't know that, and that's something that's really unique about Idaho that, like you said, I think is pretty cool. You could be having a terrible deer and elk hunt and then see a bear, day 6 of a 5-day trip, and like, hey, I'm gonna bring
Yeah,
home
man.
some food. And bear meat's really good. A lot of people think it's weird, but I really enjoy bear meat. It's really tasty. So,
Oh, most of the people that I know or work with, I just did a huge crew meal for my crew.
mhm.
Um, I like to cook for people. It's like I said, like the logistics of a big hunt's easier, dude. And the fact that my background is cooking for on tugs,
Yeah.
I can throw together an 8, 9, 10 person meal easier together than I can just cook for my wife,
Oh,
me and my
for
wife.
sure.
It's
Yeah.
it's significantly easier. And most people, when I bring in bear, they kind of give me that squint until I've cooked it for them, and they're pretty blown away that it's just like anything else.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really good. So, unfortunately, you didn't get a bear in spring. Oh well, it happens. So,
Yeah, no
the
big deal.
next trip it was September, right?
Yeah. And so that one was another one where I brought someone. So I got a friend of mine. I've known her since high school, and I ended up meeting her husband. And him and I have become great friends. He lives up in northern BC, up on Vancouver Island. Um, and he's wanted to hunt elk, but it's like a once in a lifetime tag up there, even though they're bull like they have a great herd on the Gold Coast. If anybody is ever curious or looking up the Gold Coast, which is the um Straits of Georgia, the interior side of Vancouver Island and mainland BC, uh it's phenomenal. But he can't really have an opportunity to hunt up there. So I was like, hey dude, come down with me. Come hunt
Hmm.
Roosevelt's on the coast. You already know kind of how to hunt them up there. Come down and hunt with me.
Yep.
And
Over the
so
counter.
I'm very fortunate to have grown up out there, and I have access to great hunters, phenomenal hunters out there that have walk-in coolers and such. So um brought him down and we hunted um 7 days together. Um Great guy, love hunting with him. Our season this year was pretty early. I feel generally the Washington coastal rut doesn't kick in till later in the season.
Yeah.
So we were kind of hunting those bulls that were just starting to talk, just starting to want to play my game. Because I'm a pretty aggressive elk hunter on the coast.
Hmm.
Um, if you're not wanting to play my game, I'm doing miles. And it's just the way I hunt. It's how I get most of my interactions. I probably do move past elk that are in areas with me, but it's just the way that I've developed my success. And so, since I was hunting with him, I was really trying to pace it down
Yeah.
and hunt with him because he's a pretty decent caller. And so, like I said, I generally hunt by myself. And so being able to slow play and remembering that I
Hmm.
have that option
Yeah.
and I could do that for him. And so the first couple days, the opener was actually pretty good. We right after daylight, we ended up getting this bull piping off, and we snuck in between him and his cows. He was on one side of the ridge and they were on the other, and so I was pretty confident. Like, okay, like we got ourselves a good play, and we eased in on top of the ridge. Um, and I let out not even a challenge, just I'm here kind of bugle, just a little squirrely bugle, and he didn't like that at all. Completely turned around. And I'm not a terrible caller. I mean, I'm not going to win any championships or anything, but I feel I can get the job done. And oh, dude, he made me feel so bad about myself. I mean, as soon as he let out a little bark and just because we were hunting the edge of an old timber stand and some dog hair, and he blew out of there like he'd winded us. But we had great wind for him and the cows, and he blew off. And like I said, it was an early part of the season. We were getting on lone cows all through the unit, which was kind of frustrating,
Oh
you
yeah.
know. And well, I think day 6, which kind of sucked. They generally don't open the roads for driving in this unit. At least they haven't for years, which I kind of like because I don't mind putting the miles on my bicycle. And it's another barrier of entry for
Yep.
others. And so we come out of one of the river bottoms, and I wanted to check my maps and kind of drove up to where I knew there was service, and my phone starts getting flooded with text messages from some of my buddies who are muzzleloader hunters and saying, "Hey, if you don't know it already, the main line's open for
Mm.
driving." I was like, "What?" And so yeah, I get up there, sure shit, mainline gates open. Um, and immediately my brain started doing this on the possibilities of places. Like I said, I don't mind putting in miles, but there are some places I hadn't been to in quite a few years, because it's about a 25-mile drive,
Yeah.
and there's some big canyons in between on a bicycle. And so I was like, hey, I know exactly where we're going. uh Drove in, and we still had about a couple mile hike in after that.
Hmm.
um but I had found this old reprod patch down in another basin of the river bottom. And was like, okay, I don't want any of us, like me and him, to go down there until about an hour or two before dark. And we ease our way down. And I let out a locator bugle, and boom, right there, pipes off a bull from the bottom. And there's good timber down in the creek bottom. And then when I glass over the other side, and out comes this great big ivory tip 5x6,
That's a big.
great forks on top. And he's not the one bugling though. There's another one, great, another uh just straight four, not a raghorn, but ivory tips, cool bull, and he's just singing.
Mhm.
And my buddy comes around, and like I said, it's about an hour before dark. He's across the canyon up the other side. I'm like, okay, here's our play for the morning. Like, let's not do this. And my buddy's like, call to him. And I start to get into that mode of like, I know what I'm doing. I'm like, no, this is a hunt for both of us. Like, I'm gonna do it. Sure as shit, let out a good challenge bugle, chuckled at him, and he turned and immediately put his head down and started coming down the hill. I was like, okay, maybe there's a play here. And he didn't sound off. I kind of let off a couple other cow calls, and about 35, 40 minutes go by, nothing. Nobody sounding off. And so I was like, okay, this bull, I don't want to spook him for the morning. And he kind of goes over the ridge, and all of a sudden that bull pops its head up about 50 yards off the timber ridge, and I can see him. I was like, oh shit. And give or take, we got about 15, 20 minutes before
Dark.
dark.
Yeah.
And I roll over the edge, and I start flagging him, and he finally looks over, and I'm pointing, and he comes up the hill, and I draw at 50, and the one lone little straggled bruh is like. And the 2 years previous, I had hit sticks,
Mhm.
shooting at bulls sub 20.
Yeah.
And so I just had that in my heart. I'm like, nope, it's got to be clear. And so he moves off, and he moves down to the bottom. And this is an old clear cut, completely open. And I'm like, all right, we can't mess this up. There's a good opportunity here for the morning. And he's like, go for it. I'm like, dude, that's 170 yards to an open clear cut. There's no way I'm gonna make that. And he just starts piping off. and starts bugling. And I was like, screw it, I'll go for it. And so he's facing up the ridge at us. And every time he'd put his head down to rake,
Mhm.
I jumped to a new dirt patch. I was looking around looking for new red dirt. And I got to about 100 yards and I noticed a little skidder road on the bottom. And the
Mhm.
topography was kind of here. So I was like, if I get here,
Yep.
20-yard chip shot. And so I lose sight of him and get down to that road and I'm belly crawling across the mud. And all of a sudden I see his antler tips just over the edge. And I'd had an arrow knocked and drew back and he saw me draw and he whirled and stopped at 14. Uh put one because he was quartering away pretty hard,
Yeah.
but sank one behind that last rib and up into
Mhm.
his upper shoulder, his offside shoulder. He bolted, whirled, and I stood up and knocked another one, and he stood there at 44 looking at me again, quartering hard the other way.
Mhm.
And so he let me range, knock, draw, settle, and then I put another one in behind the last rib and up into the upper shoulder. And so I ended up putting two
Yeah, you crisscrossed
right
them.
in here. And dude, if that shot, either one of them shots had been anywhere near the timber, not happening. That
Mm.
was, I want to say, they were saying dark was probably 7:45, whatever it was, and I
Yeah.
probably took a shot. You got last light and all. I probably took it at 7:44.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, because I knew I already had an arrow in him. Had I already not had an arrow in him, I probably wouldn't have taken that second shot.
Yeah. Yeah, of
But
course.
if a bull's standing there and you already got one in him, you got to try and put him down. And so yeah, because when I snuck down, I didn't have a pack with me. I had my bugle on the side. I didn't have anything. I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to leave this spot because
Mhm.
I because by the time he took off and whirled after that second shot, I couldn't even see up to the top of the ridge really.
Yeah.
And so, but we waited. I waited about an hour before going to look for him. My buddy brought my pack and my headlamp down, and I think he probably went 80 yards down into the bottom and piled up. And so it was fun, man. Fun being
Yeah.
with somebody and um getting to enjoy that one. That was good.
Yeah, that's cool. That's super cool. And I like that you mentioned that the difference between being out of the thick timber and in the thick timber. When you're in the thick timber, it's dark like what, 15, 20 minutes early?
Oh shoot, dude. If you're in an old spruce patch and you're in the shit, dude. It's dark 45 minutes to an hour before,
Yeah. Yeah, the
at
super
least dark enough
growth.
to where
Yeah.
you're not seeing your pins,
Yeah.
you know. And it's funny that 44-yard shot of all the bulls that 'cause I've never up until this next year, I will have never killed a bull east of I-5.
Okay.
Like I strictly only ever
Yeah.
hunted Roosevelt. Just
True
I love
roses.
it.
Yeah.
I love the I try and do it. I bought A tags and I've in Idaho, like I have had Montana tags and I've
Yeah.
given them back.
Uh-huh.
I just love doing it. And it's just my whole family. It's just like it's a thing that I feel with like being connected to my old man. He did it,
Yeah.
and it's just yeah, dude. It tickles my plums.
Oh, for sure. Well, that's cool. So, you had a successful Washington Rosie elk hunt. What was your next hunt you had?
And so I ended up killing a bear in September with my bow as well.
Okay, yeah,
Um
yeah. Go ahead and
just a
talk about
just a
that one.
couple days later I was scouting. We got my bull out and I still knew a handful of archery guys that were hunting. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was out looking for elk for them and calling and just trying to locate anything
Yeah.
for them and ended up coming on a black in another part of the unit and ended up getting that one. So um kind of another hunt. It was just by happenstance.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, yeah, but my next big one was Idaho this year. This one was
Okay.
it's an over the counter tag. You're not gonna I mean there's big bucks that are taken in every unit. No, it
Yeah.
doesn't really matter what anybody says. Like they never see big bucks or that. Like please take that with a grain of salt and who you're talking to. but there's big quality bucks in every unit. They may be few and farther between than others, but this hunt this year, this is a specific unit. It was the last unit that me and my old man hunted in
Hmm.
before he ended up passing. And one of the last few days, we had spread my grandfather on top of one of these peaks. Surprised me with it. My grandfather had died a few years before we had went on this hunt, and he had spread the ashes up in Prince William Sound with a lot of family and stuff up there. And I was offshore. I couldn't make it, and so I didn't know he had saved some of his remains for me. And when we made it to this peak, we were sitting there having a cup of coffee, and he pulled him out of the bag. I'm like, what the hell you got there? And he said it was Grandpa. And oh, dude, I broke down like a sobbing little
I
baby because I
bet.
knew it was,
Yeah.
oh, dude, it was. And so we got to spread him up there. And in the last few days before my old man passed, he asked me if I'd take him up there. And of course, I'm not going to say no to the old man. And so, but I told him I'd never go back there unless I had a tag. And you can get dramatic as you want with it, but that was kind of how I wanted to do it. I didn't want to go back there and just hike in the summer and sit there. Like I wanted it to be an experience like him and I had, because that was the hunt that really got me. Like we both were sitting there after we spread the ashes. And like I said, we've been hunting out of state, big country together, and he'd been doing it since the 80s. But we both looked at each other and we were like, how do we stay here? As referring to this peak.
Yeah.
And we're
Yeah.
like, how do we not? Because it was like 2,800 feet to get up there from where our base camp was. And I had never in my years of hunting thought like, well, this is just the way I hunt. You'll hike over a big peak and well, 3 hour, 4 hour, 5 hour hike back, 2, 3 hours of sleep, get up and do it the next morning. But we looked at each
Yeah.
other. We were like, how do we stay here? And that really just sparked the backpack, deep
Yep.
country style hunting in 2016, 2015. And so we drew these tags, not drew them. It's not a draw tag, it's an OTC
Yeah.
deal. But yeah, so we had that one. I was taking a buddy of mine with me and then his buddy. Because like I said, I've been really wanting to take people. And I told him, I was like, hey, like this hunt for me, there's this portion of the hunt that I'm gonna go on, and that's spread my own man. But I have an area that I want to get to. And so I ended up not holding up my end of the bargain. I let my nerves get to me. I had an opportunity at a real quality buck for the unit and just a heavy horn old bruiser. Nice good 6x5, deep back forks, had some trash off one side. But my buddies got some respectable. They like one of them I think was a bigger 140 dark, and the other guy ended up getting a like a 150, 155 somewhere in there. Um, I just started looking at scoring. I could be totally wrong, but that's what we looked at it.
Yeah.
Um, but dude, it was a ball. It was an absolute ball. Um, we ended up hiking up into this. Like I said, this is a unit that I've been wanting to go back to for years, and so I'd been scouting it. Um, the first buck we ended up killing was about an hour after we got up on the ridge, and it was about a 2,200 foot climb from the river. Um, I just this spine ridge was going to be it. I didn't want to be anywhere near a trail. Um, I just wanted to get up to this peak. And we got up there. We decided we weren't going to pitch a tent, pitch a camp. The weather was good. We just kicked holes on the side of the mountain and got underneath trees. And I go down one of the finger ridges and they go uh, up off one of the knobs. And all of a sudden I look up after about 20, 30 minutes because we had about an hour of light. And once we decided, and all of a sudden I see him booking it down the edge of this ridge, like underneath me. And I was like, okay, there's something somewhere. And neither one of them had really killed like a different age class like that. You start getting
Yeah.
into that dark horn thicker. And so I was like, hey
Hmm.
guys, like we got 7, 8 days up here. I was trying to tell them like there is the possibility for big bucks in here. You just kind of gotta wait. Because I was fully prepared and I did eat my tag. But I wanted to let him know without totally stealing a hunt from him, that try and do this. But
Yeah. Don't shoot the
um,
first forky you see.
Yeah, but my buddy Andy, dude, he don't care. He'll kill a spike. He's so excited, and that's why I love the goofy bastard. He's so full of just stupid positivity. That was one of the main reasons why I wanted to bring him, and he's just a fun guy to be around. Um, so Alex ended up seeing after I ended up getting glass on it, great four, and he ended up putting it down with a 380-yard shot. Um, right before dark. And so, mind you, we had just hiked, like I said, that 2,800 feet
Yep.
pitch camp, not even pitch camp, just kick camp out. And so we went off the ridge down the other side. And so we killed his buck, packed him up, hung him in a tree. And so that all happened within an hour of being up there.
Yeah.
Um, so we get him hung up, cook a little deer in the jet boil, and then because I always pack up little packets of ghee butter
Hmm.
for like I drink a bone broth either in the
Yep.
morning or the afternoon, and so I'm a big fat guy when I'm out there. I try not to eat a ton of sugar,
Yep.
um, and so I put those, and so fried up uh some of the tenderloin and
Nice.
that and ended up racking out, getting up about an hour before light, went up to that same knob that we were looking at and looked off the backside of one of the other finger ridges. And Alex, who spotted the last one, we finding out, man, he's a damn near professional glasser, dude. He spotted most everything we were seeing. He's got a skill. And he ended up spotting these two bucks down on the bottom. And he couldn't really make out with what I had. And I had my bigger spotting scope with me. And as soon as I found where they were, I put that on there. I was like, oh, that's it. That's what
Yeah.
I'm looking right there.
That's the one.
I was like, that one. And so it was, I want to say that like from where we saw him was a little over a mile, two
Okay.
canyons over and down in. And he was with another good, respectable four, but one my buddy ended up killing. Um, and so I was like, hey, I want to go two ridges over and get a really good eye on this thing and make sure that the other one's a good one because I'm chasing that other one. And so I leave them there so they can keep eyes on it. And I go over to the next ridge and get eyes on them. And they're feeding out. They're probably by the time I find them again, they're probably a good 200 yards and moving, like
Hmm.
down canyon. And they come around, and I lose sight of them for shit, probably an hour because they ended up feeding around this big rock pile, and I thought they had fed out of my life.
Yeah.
And so there's these other couple bucks underneath me, and I'm not gonna lie, like I'm looking at them, like trying to get them more size on them. Like I could, they're right
Just
there. I'm
go a
like,
little
no.
bigger.
Yeah, it's like I've seen these. I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. And I go back to that where the slide comes down, and sure as shit, they feed out again, and they end up bedding in this tree stand. And I think they're about 1,400 yards away, and I can't shoot that far. I won't even attempt to.
Yeah.
That's not my thing. But they bed, they feed out, they bed, and so like they're there for the day. It's 10:30, sun's up, and so I mark them on my map. Like, okay, if I can get to this knoll out in front of them, it'll put me about 400. I'm like, okay,
Okay.
I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah.
And so dive down the ridge, and luckily I found this is another part of the story. We only hiked up the mountain with 4 liters of water a piece. I was like, that'll get us a day and a half,
Yeah.
and because I'd never been on the backside of that before, and I didn't know exactly where there was water, and the river is a straight line mile, but the up and down is probably a mile and a half.
Yeah.
And so luckily found a seat, marked that, got some water, went down, and a lot of it is sparse timber, open sage.
Hmm.
And so taking it real easy, not to jump anything that could run down the canyon at them. And I ended up getting on them and saying, dude, just feeding in, feeding out. And this is where I kind of let my nerves get to me, and I should have settled myself down. I had them there for probably 20, 30 minutes getting set,
Hmm.
but I should have backed out, gone down around, and there was a another kind of knoll with some covered tree that would have put me about 280. But some other bucks have had fed out some other like another good three, good tall wide one, and then I lost sight of them. So the idea of moving with
Yeah.
probably 4 or 5 bucks that I couldn't see, and so I settled in, ended up being 440, and he fed out broadside, had him dead to rights, touched it off, shot over the top, and right then I looked down out of my scope, and I didn't know that my two buddies had come down the canyon
Oh, okay.
and were underneath me uh, at that hillside. I
Yeah.
didn't know they were there. Um, and so I get back on that buck because he ran up the hill, and then that other four had started running up the canyon, and they were running directly at me, straight up the canyon. I was like, "Holy shit, this is gonna happen at point blank!" And my buddy can see him coming, and he ends up taking about an 80-yard broadside shot on that 4 point, dumps him right there, and that's when that big 6x5 looked up, and he bolted down the canyon and forever out of my life.
Oh man.
Yeah. Um, but that seeing the I got down there, I ran up the hill real quick to where I'd shot and just even though I knew I clean missed, I could see it through my
Yeah.
scope. Like
Yeah.
I had it set up, and but I wanted to go check. Got up there, no blood, came back. We worked his buck up.
Hmm.
Uh, dude, it was I've been hunting a long time, but it'd been a long time since I'd seen just the pure joy of a new
Yep.
hunter. Like
Oh yeah.
not just killing their first, but like a dandy, respectable buck.
Yeah.
And the sheer joy of seeing Andy and Alex 2 nights in a row or 2 days in a row get to experience, dude, I'll hang my hat on that. I had so much fun. So we get that buck worked up and climb out of there. And it's probably another because we weren't about to go up the way I came down. Going
Oh
down
yeah.
is way easier than coming up. So we went up to where I found water, filled us all up with water, and then took the canyon up to the spine ridge that we were on. So it was about 3 miles back to camp doing it that
Hmm.
way. And so we get back up, and I'm like, hey guys, like Alex's buck has now been hanging for, it'll be hanging for a day and a half. Like it warms up in the day. It's not like we're hunting end of October, early November. It's still the 21st.
Okay.
And so we're still getting 55, 60-degree temps in the sun. And so I'm like, hey guys, we got two good bucks here. Plus we still are all carrying 4 days of food and a full camp setup.
Yeah.
And so um we packed a significant we did not pack correctly because I didn't know Alex at all. And so I was not willing to give up like my truck or my gear or anything because I didn't know him. And through this hunt, through what Alex did, like, oh, I'll hunt with this guy anywhere. This guy's
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
animal. And so that's why we're doing what we're doing this year. Um, but so I was like, hey guys, I'm also not packing bones out of here. Like this is gonna be gnarly. We need to bone all this out
Hmm.
and split this. And so we boned everything out, came down, um, and this is where hunting partners become friends for life.
Yeah. Brothers.
Um,
Brothers in
this
arms.
right here. You know, you pack 2 deer out the way we did, or packed them up and out,
Hmm.
and then the packing down. Um, 2 deer. I mean, all of us hiked in up the mountain with water. I mean, we were at 75 pounds a piece with
Yeah.
packing in water. And like I had my big 95 millimeter Swaro.
Hmm.
Um, I still had my hot tent. They had theirs. Like, so there was an extra amount of gear because, like I said, I didn't know Alex. I didn't know if he was gonna be able to hunt this way and it was gonna want to leave. And I'm like, I'm willing to take you, but I'm not willing to sacrifice my hunt if you want to leave. Like, you're a grown man, you leave. But
Yeah.
after experiencing this with him, Oh, it's a one truck hunt now.
Yeah,
We hunt together. It's one rig. We know how to hunt together. Um, so we packed down. We were all packing well over 100 pounds apiece. Um, we get down, get out, and luckily a guy I work with who I'm actually hunting with this next year, he was hunting a neighboring unit and
yeah.
it
Hmm.
closed early. And so I just happened to call him and I was like, "Hey dude, how, asking about the hunt." He's like, "Well, I didn't get anything, ended up letting a buck walk." I was like, "Hey, I got two deer of friends. If you're going home, uh, let me throw these coolers in your truck and throw it in my
Hmm.
chest freezer."
Yep.
Dude, it worked out so good. So
That's cool.
he came over from the neighboring unit because he was going home, loaded up Andy and Alex's deer, all their meat, and took it home. I called my wife. She turned on a secondary freezer that I got specifically for this,
Yep.
and he got it there, was able to put their stuff on ice or freeze it. And so, but those guys ended up staying with me another 5 days. So a bunch of smaller bucks. Um, and I ended up not notching my tag on a deer. I'd killed a bunch of dinks over there over the years, couple good ones, but I was just like, okay, I've reached the point now where I'm like, I wanna either kill a dandy, what I consider that, or I'm okay. Um, but so we one of the last days we were there, we uh we were side hilling this sage up kind of a ridge over from where we were. And the way I kind of felt about it is we were kind of doing a Hail Mary in the third quarter, and it was kind of frustrating me. I was like, all right, like I still got some time, like why are we doing this? And so I sat down, was kind of feeling a little bummed, the hunting had slowed way down. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, hey guys, you guys are leaving tomorrow. Like, why don't we just run back? I know there's a laundromat there in this little town we were hunting away from. I was like, hey, I'd love to go throw my stuff, wash it up, and then like one of the things I do is another way is like if you come out of the woods, everybody gets a burger, do whatever you do. Is
Yeah.
like right about noon is about the checkout time, 11 noon for most hotels or
Hmm.
motels. A good way if you're trying to look to get a shower, you're not going to get a room, go to the manager of some of these small town motels and be like, hey, um, here's 20 bucks. Like, can I just go take a quick shower? And most of the time, the housekeeping in there, the whoever it is, like, hey, can you not clean this room for 20 minutes? So I would go take a shower. Flip
Yeah.
them 20 bucks and you can go take a shower, instead of getting a room overnight and wasting some time.
Yeah.
That's the little trick of the trade that I do. Um, but I kind of explained that, and Alex was like, "We just got up here. Slow your ass down. You know, you're kind of being a Nancy." And I was like, "All right, dude. All right." And so we sit there, we're glassing this ridge off the other side, and like I said, my goofy buddy Andy, he's a couple feet below me. He's like, "Bear, like, shut the fuck, no way, dude." And he has me turn, and sure, like 250 yards, clear as
Mhm.
day on the finger ridge next to me is an awesome color phase, uh, like kind of cinnamon. Nice
Yep.
big white patch sitting staring right down the valley. I'm like, no shit. And so Alex is there behind me and he's got his spotter out now and we had the same digiscope set up.
Yep.
And so he locked in and I ended up killing that one at 250 yards across.
And
And
you got it on film.
that's what I was looking for in the spring was something like that. And we get over to it, great blonde like white patch in the center, exactly what I was looking for. And we drug that down the canyon and skinned it out, got all the meat out. And to me, dude, like I didn't get my buck, but like I said, to see them do their thing and then
Yeah.
to get that bear, I was like, okay, like this is awesome. And and there's another neighboring unit to the south that I really wanted to get into. That's a draw unit, and probably most likely for anybody that would get it would be once in a lifetime. And I
Mhm.
wanted to go down there and take some pictures. My
Yep.
dad had drawn that tag twice in the 80s before, and once in the 90s when I was little, and he had killed just this absolute monster. And so I knew that I wanted to go down there and take
Yeah.
a look at some of the bucks and how they were doing down there. I had seen some great bucks down there, some absolute thrashing monsters. Um, so I ended up calling the hunt and ended up going home. I still had a few more days here in Washington to hunt blacktail.
Hmm.
And so I come home and hunted here a few more days. And so I was hunting a unit kind of closer to home because I'd just spent so much time away from the wife and kids. It was like, all right, I'll
Yeah.
day hunt. Like, I love my wife. I don't like the idea of not being with her. So kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
compromised there towards the end of the season. And it's a it's a it's a modern. It's kind of weird. It's a modern firearm unit. I had a rifle tag, but it's firearm restricted. So shotgun slugs,
Hmm.
muzzleloader, or bow.
Okay.
And so I was like, I'll hunt with my bow the last few days. And ended up dropping a pretty good I'll send you a picture of it. It's pretty damn nice 3-point with eye guards. Um like right before Halloween.
That's cool.
Yeah, so it was a great year. Got the three Bs, the buck, bull, and the bear. That's always a fun time. Um but that was my season. I tried to get out and help some buddies later for late muzzleloader.
Yep.
Um, but it didn't end up happening.
Yeah, that's a tough one. So a lot of cool things from that story. Thanks for sharing with me.
Hmm?
That's a lot of fun. You spent a lot of time in the woods, and like you were saying, you didn't get the buck you wanted, but you got to see your two buddies, which is so cool. And then you got to get your kind of consolation prize of a great bear, which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
And
dude.
it's funny, you seem more excited about them getting their bucks than like you were about getting your bear. People ask me my favorite day of hunting. It was when my brother got his first elk. I called it in. It was 8 yards from me. It went past him, and then he shot it 55 yards. Like to me, that's my favorite day of hunting. I didn't even, there wasn't my bow.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
he was pumped, and he got to do his first tracking on his first big game animal. And to me, that's my favorite day of hunting.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm not
for
gonna sit
hunting
here and
whatever.
bullshit you that harvesting, killing, taking, whatever word you want to use for it, isn't one of my favorite things because yeah, dude, I love eating meat. Like,
Yeah,
don't get me wrong. Um, but like I said, dude, seeing the utter joy
yeah,
of seeing them do that, like I've been around this my whole life, and most of my friends and older friends have. I learned from them, and they've shown their kids. So there's that level of joy that kind of, I don't want to say fades because that's wrong, you know, but being that little kid again, like you go to your
yeah,
first baseball game with your old man or do whatever that is,
yeah, yeah.
to see that pure joy in a grown man.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Oh, dude, it's worth its weight in gold.
Oh
And
yeah.
honestly, like I said, my old man passed a few years ago, and it was a big part of my life. But taking other people out is kind of my way of learning to, or like slowing me down
Yeah.
to where I can learn, okay, how do I make it not enjoyable? Because I'm not so much worried about making it enjoyable. Like they're still grown men, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
But it's slowing me down to think like, how can I make this enjoyable for my kids?
Yep.
And
Yeah,
slowing it
100%.
down to where I then like in that regard. And so I'm learning a ton taking new hunters out that I'm kind of greedily learning how to then utilize that with my kids.
There's nothing wrong with that, honestly. I tell my
Mhm.
wife all the time, my daughter makes me way more compassionate with my students because I'd be like, you're an adult, figure it out. Well, now my
Yeah.
kid will just like cry and she doesn't even know why she's crying. I'm like, oh, like people have emotions. Okay. That's a new.
Yeah.
So that's funny you
Yeah.
say that.
Right.
We've been on here almost an hour. I don't want to take up too much more of your day. So real quick, I want you to go through your bow and rifle setups and then we'll get you out of here because I know people are curious about that.
Okay. Um, I've been shooting the same bow for the last couple of years. Shooting a Matthews, the V3X and a
Mhm.
29. Um, and then it was kind of a big deal when I switched. I usually shot a 5 pin.
Yep.
Um, that was traditionally what I always shot. But I moved in 2020
Hmm.
to a 3 pin slider.
Is that the
And
spot hog?
no, I tried one. I had a Hog Father. It was the V3X was the first one where they went into that bridge lock
Yep.
system. And this is my gripe with Matthews. When they released this thing and then they were every competitor, sure, they in the industry, they knew what was coming. So they were developing these bridge lock
Yeah.
things and the attachments and all that. Well, when I bought it, nothing, and it was my first real year of really diving in to archery and like fine tuning. Because I'd shot the same bow before that for years.
Yeah.
Matthews switchback, um, set it and forget it.
Mhm.
Never, this is the arrow that I shot. This is the
Yep.
broadhead I shoot. Never tinkered with anything because it worked. And so went with a Hog Father 3 pin that was didn't do its thing. So there was a ton of fine tuning. So I'm shooting a black gold right now.
Okay.
Um, I'm really interested in I might do it this year. That Canyon Pounder.
Oh, I want it so bad.
Oh, dude,
That thing's sweet.
that thing, yeah, that. Um, I would love to get that in a 4 pin.
Yep.
Um, I've got to put my hands on one somebody had. It looks mint, and his guy that I like and respect his opinion. He's like, dude, this thing's indestructible.
Yeah.
And so probably try and find one of those if I can talk my wife into it. So yeah, Matthews with a black gold 3 pin. Um, I shoot a hand release.
Hmm.
I shoot one of the newer stands. Um, I had one of the original stands, but my hand, I got pretty big hands, and I don't like shooting a 4 finger. I kind of
Yeah.
like the 3 finger, and um, that one always felt kind of dainty, just kind of small. And when they
Yeah.
came out with the new one, um, because I always kind of felt like my pinky was kind of floating and it wasn't really
Yep.
anywhere. And when they came out with that 3 pin with kind of or I mean the 3 finger with the kind of pinky hook,
Yep. I
oh,
know
I
what
was
you're talking about.
sold, dude. I was like, okay, take my money. Here it is.
Yeah.
And it still comes with all the great stuff that Stan's known for is you can completely customize that thing to exactly what you want. And then they ended up coming out with the thumb button that was the click. Damn it.
Yeah.
I would
I
love
know.
that. But
I hate
no,
that.
no. So I'm not gonna go with that. So um and then I've been shooting the Black Eagle, honestly. Not their 4 mil, it's still a 5 mil. I can't
The
honestly.
Rampage.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I shoot.
So and with their insert, or I should
Mhm.
say outsert, with their outsert,
Yep.
there's a great shop, probably about an hour from me, O'Connell Archery down there in Shelton. I really like the guy who operates. Neil's a great dude. Um, Helped me out a lot with my archery journey. That's still.
Yeah.
And then those Sever broadheads, man.
That's what you
Um,
shoot.
yeah, dude, I love them.
Yeah, they're
Because if
good.
I shoot a mechanical, love me or hate me, whoever, it's just what I shoot.
Yeah.
One of the main reasons I swapped to these is I was hunting with that switchback
Hmm.
and I was on my bike and should have had my bow flipped over with the arrows and the broadhead pointing down. I
Yeah.
wasn't. It came loose and I went to pull my bow out. I heard elk had run and the fixed blade had come out and nicked one of my cables.
Yep. Hunt's over.
Humped over. Um, And so, of course, I'm cussing and screaming. I'm never shooting these damn things again. I'll probably switch at some point. I'll probably tinker at some point, but that was one of the huge things. And I've taken with that broadhead, with that arrow setup now, I've taken three blacktails, two bear, and an elk, and I've had full pass-throughs. I mean,
Yep.
other than this year, because I mean, I sank it in the inside shoulder
Yeah,
of
it's not going through a
an
scat
elk.
after
So
going through
yeah,
17
but
inches.
other than that, full blow through pass through of a jelly bear, two two blacktails. One was at 40, so I mean that had good penetration and full pass through on those, and so I'm going to be pretty hard pressed to not keep shooting those because just the
Working, yeah.
yeah, they're working. Um, my rifle setup, that is something that I tinker with beyond. Um, I got a few different calibers, but um, this year I went with a 6.5 PRC, kind of bought
Okay.
into the hype, kind of had not bought really a new rifle for myself. I kind of always shot hand-me-downs. I shot it I might shoot it this year, just like I said, I like to tinker. I got a 264 Win Mag that I absolutely love that I think I'm going to reload for this year. Those Burger 154s
Yep.
um, are kind of catching my attention instead of shooting it out of the 6.5 PRC, which is the
Yep.
short action Magnum action. I'd love to shoot those 154s out of a 264 out of a long Magnum action and see what I can get. But for this year, I ended up going with that 6.5 PRC with a 20-inch barrel and an
Okay.
Omni brake.
Yep.
Um, that thing was so easy to shoot, so comfortable.
Oh yeah.
I've never not shot a Magnum, and so having something in a short casing, oh dude, it was like shooting a 22. It was like shooting a
Oh, it's
22. I
nice.
could sit there all day, and it was lovely.
Oh yeah.
Um, and then I ended up putting a VX5
Hmm.
3 by 14 by 40 on it.
Yep.
Um, and then that Spartan Precision bipod, it's kind of hard to go away from that because how light it is. But I think I'm gonna go away from that this year because the idea of kind of I don't like the idea of possibly having to look around to then
Yeah.
put the bipod on. It's kind of a little much when you're kind of fumbling around.
Yeah, that's
Um, I might look something else, but it's also worked. It's got great pan. It's got great, left to right, you can lock it. I have changed the locking mechanism on it because when it's cold and that
yep. Yep.
little sway on there, like it's kind of a pain in the ass. But if you look, you can find different bars to be able to like really crank on it. But yeah, it was a Bergara B4 mouthful, B14 squared crest.
Yep.
Um, yeah, so I bought that one. Uh, Shoots great, love it. Easy rifle to pack. Probably should have gone with a 22-inch barrel. But the
A little
20,
more velocity.
yeah, a little more velocity. If you really think about it, you're going with a short barrel. You're pretty much getting the same performance you would out of a Creedmoor.
Yeah, 24-inch Creedmoor, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like should have probably, but we'll see. I don't know. I might pull my 264, my I might pull that 24-inch barrel off of that to put it on the
Put it on your
PRC.
6.5. Yeah.
See if it see what kind of performance that gets, and if it does, then I'll probably hunt with that.
Yeah. Well, cool. Thanks for jumping on the podcast. I've been meaning to talk to you about your season. I've been busy. You've been obviously very busy with a
Yeah.
good hunting season. So, congrats on all your success, and I look forward to talking to you about what you got going on next year. Maybe we'll have to make this an annual thing where we just let's talk about Cory's hunting season again, because pretty fun
Yeah,
to
I
hear you
got some I
talking
got some
about it.
stuff in the works for this year. Going back, we're doing a I think I've already started planning. My wife doesn't want to hear about it. We're gonna do a jet boat trip for bear
Yep.
in the spring. I got an Alaska app in. I might end up back up there in September. I don't know. Fingers crossed for that one. Like I said, I ended up getting two different Idaho tags, so I'm very fortunate with that
Yeah.
one, and a couple other applications in other states and this state. So, yeah, man, we'll see.
Well, cool. Do you have any advice you want to pass on to anybody? It sounds like you kind of are enjoying taking the new hunters out. So, for any new hunters that listen to this, any advice you can give them?
Yeah. Old hunters and new hunters, man. Our numbers are getting smaller and smaller. This is a pretty niche community, and it's getting harder and harder. The barrier of entry, uh, you know, Western Washington, Western Oregon, timberland is becoming harder and harder to get on. They're
Yeah.
charging fees, very similar to like what has been the whitetail hunters out east have been dealing with for their whole existence. And I see it all the time on forums and, you know, go out and hike and find your own spots. Like, sure, that's all fine and dandy, but helping the next guy out is going to be a big one to keep in this lifestyle and livelihood. I'm not saying give somebody your honey holes, but maybe helping them out with, oh yeah, maybe I look at maps this way, or here's like your e-scouting or whatever. There's a million different courses, but pointing someone in the right direction, maybe being a little helpful to somebody, um, is gonna pay dividends for us
Yeah.
as a group, man. And yeah, find what you love. If you're a duck hunter, pheasant hunter, upland bird, big game hunter. Um, I don't know if anybody, your listeners or anybody pays attention in Colorado, what we just won there.
Yeah, we're big.
It's happening in Arizona. I'm very heavily involved in what's going on here in Washington.
Yep.
Start paying attention. Um, they're going to whoever the boogeyman is in your state, they are working um, to strip hunting opportunities and possibilities. And start paying attention and get involved however you can. If it's not money, if it's time, if you got more time than money or more money than time, help out wherever you can.
Yeah, I think that's great for the longevity of hunting. And I'll just end it before we jump off here with, if you are curious, howl.org, right?
Yeah, they're as far as the grassroots go and what they do,
Yeah.
um, they they're a newcomer in the last handful of years, out of California. And I know if people don't know who they are and you hear California, they are a great entity that comes out of there. They've done remarkable things in Colorado, getting the noise out. Um, Charles Whitwam, that's the main face of that organization, is a phenomenal human, phenomenal guy. I want to say he guides in California, so he's not just some suit and tie somewhere that doesn't participate. Like the
Yeah,
guy's
yeah.
out
He's
there,
one of us.
and he's part of the community and does great things and works well with a lot of organizations that go on. They do a ton of informational outreach as well. And I guess another thing, modern day hunters like kind of knowing where your dollars are going. We all love a good, backpack, gear, whatever your gear is, kind of know where your money's going. Does that company actually put money back into the lifestyle or the way of life that we all love, man?
Yep.
And that's something that we all need to we could all probably get a cheaper piece of gear at one box store or another, you know. But is that money that you're spending there, are they going to support what we're doing? Or are they going to use it to fund other organizations that might not? So that's another one as a community we need to start looking at.
Yeah, definitely. Well, want to thank you, Eric, again for, excuse me, not Eric, Corey. Sorry, I'm reading off a different script. Thanks again, Corey, for jumping on here. Um, I'll put your Instagram in the show notes so people can follow you. I think it's C Daddy, right?
Yeah, if anybody wants to make fun of me for that one, that's a family story. But yeah,
Yeah, we can get to that on another
I'm
podcast.
not on there nearly as much. Social media for me is never as healthy for me.
Yeah,
You get
yeah,
to
for
death
most people.
scrolling and I don't want, there's just as much positive and negative, and I find myself not being as healthy minded. And so I'm
Yeah,
I'm sporadically on there. I love looking at family photos and stuff that
Yeah,
I like. But yeah, you can find me on there, C Daddy.
so funny. All right, well, thanks again, Corey. Appreciate you jumping on here, and we'll catch you all in the next podcast. Thanks for listening.